Brattleboro Common. This land was deeded in 1815 to representatives of the Brattleboro Meeting-House Society for $300. A Congregational Church was here until 1842. There is a marker to designate its location. This roughly 2.5 acres was a barren, sandy tract crossed on foot or by team. It remained this way until 1856, when bailiffs of the village gave it to be enclosed and improved. Amid controversy, a fence was built. Trees were planted. A grove of locusts on the northeast end was seen as the surest way of bringing on grass. Most of the trees now standing on the common were planted then. The fence required renewal after a few years, and it was not until 1870 that both turf and trees had become so well established as to protect themselves and allow the removal of the fences. The common was kept up by annual contributions from interested people until the Rural Improvement Association began to care for it about the year 1880. The land has never been deeded since 1815, and it was never formally given to the town or village for a common, as many supposed, but is simply held by the town under the law of possession which was in force in Vermont up to 1858. The original boundaries were rather indefinite, with the Newfane Road on one side and the Putney Road on the other, until 1857, when it was moved to its present site by consent of the district. The Chase Street Schoolhouse stood on the northwest corner. At one time, a trolley system crossed the common. A definitive characteristic of the common is its war memorials. The 1887 Civil War Soldiers Monument and the 1984 War Memorial, listing men and women who gave their lives during World War I, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. In 1983, an honor roll committee saw that the wooden World War II monument on the common was decaying. It had existed for almost 40 years. For 13 months, the local honor roll committee worked to bring the project to completion. It was erected in 1984. The granite structure was designed by Rouleau Granite Company of Barre, Vermont, and the names of those who lost their lives were inscribed by Norman Grenier of Abbiati Monuments. 2 workers from the Barre Granite Association were able to place the granite stones on the common in one day, and the names of the fallen were engraved on the same day, all in a steady rain. 97 years earlier, it had not gone as smoothly in the construction of the Civil War Soldiers Monument. That is the large monument that dominates the common. The 1984 installation of the War Memorial took one day. It took about 6 months to get all of the pieces in line for the 1887 Civil War Soldiers Monument. The monument proved to be controversial. A veterans group had begun fundraising and created a design. The Select Board took responsibility for final design decisions. The board established a monument committee to make recommendations. 2 camps formed. The veterans group wanted a soldier's statue with a standing sentinel on top of a granite base. The committee elite, represented by the board committee, favored a reproduction of Larkin Mead's Recording Angel on top of a granite base. Petitions were circulated. The Select Board and many prominent businessmen were in favor of the Recording Angel. The angel was recording the names of all those who served during the conflicts. One writer explained that Mead was a prophet, as his original 1855 ice sculpture of the Recording Angel predicted the sacrifice of all those from Brattleboro who went off to war. Many supporters of the angel argued that the concept was an artistic blending of military service and local pride. Meanwhile, Colonel George Hooker and Jacob Estey led those in favor of the standing sentinel. Hooker argued that veterans wanted one of their own represented on the top of the monument, and Estey thought those who were most intimately involved in the Civil War should have final say. Both petitions were submitted to the Select Board. 680 valid resident signatures were on the standing sentinel petition, and 264 were on the petition in favor of the Recording Angel. The Select Board chose to proceed with the standing sentinel design. They also decided to place the monument on the Brattleboro Common. In November 1886, a 24-ton block of granite was brought from West Dummerston down the narrow gauge railway along the West River for the base of the monument. It arrived at the Brattleboro train station, was jacked up, removed from the train, and placed in a heavy truck wagon brought from the Barry quarries for the purpose of carrying the granite to the common. The challenge was pulling the granite-filled wagon up Bridge Street and then Main Street Hill. 14 horses were hooked up to the granite cart, but they couldn't budge the wagon. The local paper reported that the horses tangled up like a team of Eskimo dogs. Next, the horses were replaced with 22 oxen. The oxen had success, but it took an entire day for the oxen to pull the granite slab up Bridge Street onto Main Street and across the Main Street Bridge. The street was unable to sustain the weight of the cart. Planks were placed in the road to support the wagon wheels, but large ruts formed anyway. Beams and levers were used to help pull the cart up the hill. By the end of the third day, the wagon had made it to the Crosby block. On the fourth day, the heavily weighted wagon got stuck in front of the Brooks house when two wheels sank up to the axle into the west side of the street. It was pulled free and then sank again near the future location of Wells Fountain, this time on the east side of the street. By the end of the fourth day, the wagon, with its 24-ton load, made it to the top of the hill and was in sight of the final resting place on the common. 28 barrels of cement were poured for the monument foundation. In January 1887, the George E. Lyons Granite Quarry on Black Mountain sent 2 more granite blocks down the narrow gauge West River Railroad. Both were transported to the common. Main Street had hardened with the winter weather, and they were able to use 14 oxen to pull the 2 blocks of granite to the common in one day, making 2 trips. One block weighed 25 tons, the other 20 tons. Frederick Holbrook, the war governor of Vermont, spoke at the monument dedication, saying, "From very far back in the history of the world, it has been the practice of mankind to erect monuments in commemoration of great men and of great deeds and events. The lessons which these monuments teach to succeeding generations are most useful and make deep and lasting impressions. From the contemplation of them, we are led to form higher ideals and to take new and increased courage in the discharge of duty to ourselves, to our country, and to mankind." James Tanner, a Civil War veteran and amputee, was also asked to speak at the ceremony. He said, "As we stand here in the presence of that granite, it requires no draft on the imagination to predict that it will stand while time shall last, and to all who come here to Brattleboro, it will tell the story of the loved and the lost." Colonel George Hooker, Civil War Medal of Honor recipient and local businessman, addressed the crowd. "The citizens of Brattleboro feel a just pride in the record they made during the War of the Rebellion. The call for 300,000 men was made, and Vermont was the first state in the Union to respond." He then went on to name at least 123 Brattleboro soldiers who fought in the war. He told stories of the many who died. He did not speak of the African-American soldiers who represented Brattleboro in the Civil War. The number of soldiers on the granite and bronze monument who served and died during the Great Rebellion is not correct. Brattleboro is credited with almost 500 soldiers. The plaque states that 385 men of Brattleboro served from 1861 to 1865, and 31 died in service. On Juneteenth, 2022, at a Civil War monument ceremony on the Brattleboro Common, 17 soldiers were honored with a plaque that sits beside the original monument. Retired town manager Peter Elwell began the event.
"I'm delighted to welcome all of you here, where we're going to dedicate the corrective and interpretive plaque to be part of the Civil War Soldiers Monument here on the Brattleboro Common. The plaque is corrective because it provides recognition for soldiers who were excluded from the original monument, soldiers of color and substitute soldiers who served in place of wealthier residents who were allowed to pay money to avoid military service. The plaque is interpretive because it provides history and context to help people understand how the original omissions happened and how the corrections came to be. But it was Avery, Priya, and Annabelle who made their compelling case and concluded by asking me, now that you know this, what are you going to do about it?
On behalf of the town of Brattleboro, I'd like to take a moment to thank the individuals remembered here by this memorial and by this plaque for the services and the sacrifices they made for their country, for their state, and for this community during the American Civil War. May this memorial and this plaque serve as a continuing reminder of this community's gratitude for that service.
The plaque is corrective because it provides recognition for soldiers who were excluded from the original monument. These were soldiers of color and substitute soldiers who served in place of wealthier residents who were allowed to pay money to avoid military service. The plaque is interpretive because it provides history and context to help people understand how the original omissions happened and how the corrections have come to be. It is appropriate and intentional that we are here on Juneteenth to celebrate this occasion, as Juneteenth is the annual recognition of when the news of the Union victory and the enforcement of the Emancipation Proclamation reached Galveston, Texas, which was the most remote city in the former Confederate States. Some of the soldiers who are receiving corrective recognition on this plaque today were among the soldiers who brought the news to Texas. The research for the corrective plaque was done by Brattleboro area middle school students Avery Bennett, Priya Kitzmiller, and Annabelle Thies, and their teacher Joe Rivers of the Brattleboro Historical Society.